back and forth. The chain had slipped on his bike, and he decided to change it right over here. I was looking at him changing it, and then suddenly the car came from across there in an angle.
It was, a regular day. It was hot. It was the middle of the summer.
It was extremely hot. They were all hanging out on the stoops. I mean, even though air conditioning was in existence, but a lot of these apartments didn't have an air conditioning, and there's just the tradition. I mean, that's why brownstones were built in Brooklyn, to have stoops so you can hang out on the summer.
Summer youth employment had ended a week earlier than it was supposed to. Normally, the end would have still been going on. So you had all the school people out of school, everybody on the block. So you had all the ingredients for something to happen.
You've got Gavin Cato and his cousin, both of them 7, these 2 black kids innocently playing on the street. Gavin has stopped to tinker with his bicycle.
The Rebbe was coming back from the grave of his father-in-law, and it seems that he was driving, a couple cars were driving there. Since he was the grand rabbi, so he had permission to have, I think there were 2 or 3 cars that went along with him.
In the 3rd car, following the Rebbe, the driver is Yossi Lifsh, and in the back of the car are twin brothers, the Spielman boys.
I was in the car following the Rebbe, coming back from the Ohel, which is the resting place of the previous Rebbe.
As the cars went through the intersection, the 3rd car was going through, driven by Yossi Lifsh, and a car travelling up Utica Avenue ran a red light.
Apparently the driver that came in, coming down, he was traveling south on Utica, didn't realize that this was a procession.
And this is 20 years ago. Obviously, it's not so vivid, sitting in the back seat of a car without sort of focusing exactly, but basically that we had a collision with another car.
I was there supervising them riding. I give them boundaries, and I was looking at them.
And I heard a big crash, a big boom, and I ran to the front. I said, "What happened?"
Very fast. Everything was like boom, boom, boom.
And I went to the porch, and I looked down, and I realized there was some type of accident.
I rushed, thought I could lift the car up myself because I know there was under there.
What I do remember is that Yossi got out of the car, he went to the front of the car, to the right corner, the front of the car, and he tried to do something, and then all of a sudden I got out from the left side door, and I started to walk there, and then all this mayhem broke loose.
And I had Gavin at the time, and it was going through my mind whether if he's alive or if he's dead. I was there. I just ran across, and we were trying to lift them from here. They claim the driver probably was trying to go, I don't know, to use the phone, and somebody saw him and bring him back to the scene.
People ran to the car. Instead of helping Lifsh, they attacked Lifsh.
And they started to beat him. Somebody must go crazy, and they started to beat him, beat the guy, the driver. And they mugged it, they did mug them, take his wallet and stuff like that.
There was such mayhem over there during that whole thing. I don't know if anybody, even standing there, could really tell what it is. There's the kill the Jew, then there's the screaming of this person trying to, they stole people's wallets, and they hit people with baseball bats.
And then they started to try to break up the crowd, telling everybody to disperse.
Now, the father, as you know, he's probably told you, he was trying to lift that car up. That's what a father does. And the police, they have their own protocol, and for a moment there was a little tugging and pushing, trying to figure things out.
So I says, what kind of stuff is this? So I think I was on the ground, I hold Gavin, and I get up. And he says to this purse. And I look at him, I said, you dog, I said, that's my son on the ground. And he folded his fist, I can never forget. And he punched me, bam, to my stomach.
You've got a car up on the footpath, you've got young kids seriously injured. You have a Jewish ambulance service, Hatzolah, have arrived.
We knew that ambulance that the Hasidic community had, that the Hatzolah was medium trauma. They needed a high trauma because this was a major accident.
And the police who were there and the other ambulance said, get out of here. They're going to kill you. Seeing you is going to make a big riot. So please get into the Jewish ambulance and get out of here, and we'll take care of the rest.
As the Hatzolah ambulance left the scene, Yossi Lifsh was taken by a policeman, actually thrown in the back of the ambulance, so his life could be saved.
And that's what made people angry, make people start to talk. Nothing serious happened to the twins, but they're sending them away, and the kids who are dying, they're leaving them on the ground.
There are other ambulances on the scene. They are doing what they can to help Gavin Cato and his cousin. But in terms of what unfolded later, the damage has been done.
The pot was boiling, and this was just, that blew the lid off the pot.
Angry mobs ran through Crown Heights. Rocks and bottles were thrown, shots fired.
So far, at least 6 police officers have been injured, and dozens of people have been arrested, and there is no peace in sight.
Now, all of a sudden, there were news reports that there were people out in the streets. There were blacks that were roaming in the streets. The black hats, the black coats felt that they were under attack. And the first real signals that there was insurrection in the streets of Crown Heights was taking place.
I just couldn't believe what I saw. Eastern Parkway was closed, mobs running from everywhere, and we were 5 blocks from where the calls that I've been getting and pinpointing the location. And I told them, okay, I've seen enough.
In the evening, I just heard mayhem, people running, screaming, and it's a very peaceful block. It's a residential block. So we, of course, ran over to the windows, and we were thinking, what's going on here?
The Jews were under attack. It was clearly an attack that was being waged against them, and the police department was doing Jack Daly squat and nothing to stop it.
I mean, it was just a lawless city.
I was lost. I was lost. As I get to the hospital, my thoughts come back straight. It's like, you're at the hospital. You got to get in to see your son. He's in the hospital, know what they're doing. And in the process of that, I can't remember, but somebody said to me, no, you can't go in now. They're working on him. They're trying to bring him back. Then I says, okay. At that time, I felt, well, okay, he's going to be all right. I says, okay. They said, just wait. I was just waiting now. I feel a little comfortable. My body is like rewinding. And I'm saying, okay, he's going to be comfortable. Until the doctor came out. I can never forget this woman doctor. And she took me into one of the rooms in the hospital. A lot of boxes, equipment and stuff. And she said to me, you can toss a few boxes around. Toss them if you want. Toss them around. And I said, no. She said, your son didn't make it.
Well, all I know is that night, He was going to have a haircut, of all things. He'd rung up one of his Australian mates to have a haircut.
Yankel was busy studying during the week, and a 9 to 5 regular haircut wasn't within his schedule. So he made an arrangement to go that night, 11 o'clock. Knowing my brother as I did, he would never have ventured out had he known that there was any violence on the street. There's not a way in the world. It was already not just a riot, it was an anti-Semitic riot. Kill the Jews, we're going to get the Jews, we're going to take back our streets. There were shots being fired in the air, you hear glass being smashed. My brother was going down Brooklyn Avenue towards Union Street. They came onto Brooklyn Avenue and they were on a head-on course. They cornered him against the fence of the St Mark's School in President Street. There was about 30-odd people, 3.5 rows deep, surrounding him. The eyewitness accounts are that he was remonstrating with his hands. Yankel had a black belt in karate. No question he was outnumbered at 30 to 1. And there's no question in my mind that he, notwithstanding being a black belt in karate, he would always avoid violence. He was not a violent person at all. They stabbed him from behind. It was a cowardly attack, not only from the point of view that his attackers outnumbered him by some 30 to 1, but they didn't have the guts to stand up to him face to face. As the attack took place, I was in Australia. I had no idea what had gone on, had no reason to know. I was told the news by a colleague of mine who was at the house, Harry Reicher.
I broke the news to him and I threw my arms around him as I said it.
He told me there's been a riot in New York. Yankel's been murdered. And my response was, who told you that?
He rang Yankel's phone in his apartment, and I'll never forget Norman standing there and saying, "Answer, Yankel, answer."
At that point in time, I still held on to the thinnest thread of hope that there'd been a mistaken identity, that it wasn't Yankel.
He asked me to drive him over to his parents' place, which I did, and he asked me to wait in the car.
It would have been about 9:30. The doorbell rang, and I answered it. The doorbell comes through on the phone. I said, "Hello?" And I think he said, "Mum, I can't." I said, "Oh, haven't you got your key?"
She goes, "It's good you're coming early." I said, "Well, come in, I've got some bad news." She goes, "Tell me." I said, "Come and sit down." She goes, "Tell me."
And I was sitting outside in the car. It was a fair distance away from the front door. And a few minutes later, I heard a sound that I will never forget to the day I die. The sound, the piercing shriek, scream of a mother having just been told that her child has been murdered.
What happened on that first night? That was just the beginning of several days of really ugly rioting.
There were a lot of young people blowing off a lot of, again, the anger of not having a summer job. And then there were other issues of so-called preferential treatment, people feeling that the Jewish community got more than the black community. And here was a good opportunity to vent.
So they started breaking into all the stores that were up and down Utica Avenue. Some owned by West Indians and Caribbean blacks, some owned by Jews, some owned by others. Didn't matter to them. As far as they were concerned, it was booty call time, and the booty was how much money you could get or how much items of value you could get.
At around 5 o'clock, I hear some noise. I look out the window, and I see this mass mob of humanity, if you could call it that, running down Utica to the corner. And, I mean, I've never experienced anything like that in my life. So I immediately told him, and my son, who was outside, saw what was going on. Everybody ran into the house. And I said, quick, everybody get in the bathroom.
I can't even tell you, it was a disaster. They were running and screaming, and I was afraid they had guns. Who knows what was going on here?
My house was also configured a little differently at the time. But I ran to, this was a sectioned off living room. And I ran to this window, and I looked out and was able to see that the mob had then finally come onto our street. And after going to, there's a shul, that first house is a synagogue, that's a Jewish home next to it, and then another Jewish home. After going and doing some damage over there, they then made a beeline for my property. So my son ran upstairs with the children, and I immediately told him to run into this bathroom, which is a small, tiny, windowless bathroom. There were my 5 children in here, as it turned out, 5 children plus my neighbor's 2 children. And they all squeezed into this spot, cowering in fear.
I remember listening to the news, and I think I was here, someone called me or something, and I was like, okay, what's going on? And all I can think about was, is my mom okay?
There was another woman, I understand, an elderly woman who had gone through the Holocaust, and when she saw them running, she said, oh my God, the Nazis are coming again. And she just jumped out the window. She said, rather death than what I went through in the Holocaust.
There was an Italian salesman of sorts who had a beard. He wasn't Jewish. He just happened to be driving through at a time when the temperature of the mob was too high. He was shot dead.
These thugs and hoodlums who attacked the Jews and killed the uncle didn't even know that Gavin Cato was hit by a car.
I didn't even know they had arrived. And I said to myself, well, the first thing you should do is to go to the station and find out what happened to the driver. Your child is dead. And when I get there at the station, the door, you got 2 doors you got to go in, and then you got this desk, this counter there. The officer was there, and I moved towards him, and I said, good morning. I gave him my name. My name is Carmel Cato. I live on President Street. My son was in an accident, and he died. I would like to know what the system, what's happened to the driver. I would like to know the driver. And the guy looked at me and says, oh, you, get out. I says, in my mind, I says, what? He says, you, get out. There's a counter. You walk behind the counter, open the door. And I'm standing up, and he walked and said to me, get out. And I look around, I says, I'm in the police station. And if the police tell me to get out, you better get out. He's in the territory, nothing you can do. I'm by myself. So I started to walk. I didn't say a word, I didn't make no noise. I had to cross the street, and I stand up like lost. I says, what? I can't figure it out.
Well, he's a victim. I mean, there's no... He hasn't committed any crime. He lost a child, which is one of the greatest pains that an individual can have.
With this tragedy that happened, all of a sudden now he's, quote unquote, he's got the leaders of the black community, of the African American community, one standing to his right and one standing to his left.
Al Sharpton will come out now, and if you have anything to say to him, say it civilly. You are an anti-Semite with that.
Shut up. First of all, when I got to Crown Heights, It was the day after both Rosenbaum's murder and Gavin Cato had been killed. When he called me.
When the office called me, I had no idea who Carmel Cato was. And they said, that's the father of the young kid that was killed in Crown Heights last night. I said, oh, okay. I said, put him through to me. And I gave my condolences. He asked, could I come to meet with him? He wanted me and National Action Network to help represent them.
Mr. Carmel Cato was nothing more than hijacked by these race hustler goons.
What I'm saying is that all of us need to be against racial murders, not select which racial murders we're going to be against.
Some people call them the Hawks or the Eagles, or the Wolf Pack came in and, you know, scampered him off and try to mold him into what they deemed was going to be the right media presentation.
What happened to the father of the child who was brutalized by the police officers? Who's that? Say that again. The father that died.
The driver had fled to Israel once it was announced they were not indicting him. And the family had the right to pursue civil damages. They could not do that without the driver, because he, one, was a material witness, if not the fault, be it accident or not.
Mr. Cato, you know who I am, and I represented Joseph Lish, and I hope you got his card, because he was deeply sad.
I never got a call, sympathy call, or nothing from the drivers. I never got nothing from them. There's certain things you gotta, if you do when you're young, when you get old, you gotta settle it before you depart this world. I feel strongly about that.
Although we'd been told that Yankel died in a riot, we really didn't appreciate in those early days what that meant. I must say, I thought people were slightly embellishing a mugging to a riot, to a group.
Norman Rosenbaum was today trying to come to terms with a senseless violence that took his brother's life.
Numb, stunned, angry. In New York, the atmosphere was very much everybody wanted Crown Heights riots to go away.
The mayor of New York at the time this happened was black. The first ever black mayor of New York City, David Dinkins. You had a black chief of police. They were acutely aware, and the broader population were acutely aware, that their reactions to these kind of elements were going to be watched very, very closely.
Unless a member of the family was there, certainly Yankel Rosenbaum wasn't going to get any justice. I discussed this with my parents and my wife. To a lesser extent, my young children. It was decided I'd go there as a representative of the family.
I was told if we didn't do it, nothing would be done.
I didn't want to die not knowing that we'd done everything we possibly could. And the one motivating factor I know, for me, was had I been the victim, I know my brother would have been there for me.
We heard reports within hours of my brother's murder that the police had stood back and done nothing, that the hospital had allowed my brother to bleed to death. And let me assure you that in Australia, those types of reports would be scoffed at. The police haven't followed up at all. It's now nearly 3 months after my brother's murder, and people are doing nothing.
There was a prosecution going to go ahead.
Two guys, one responsible for yelling, "Get the Jew," one for stabbing Yankel Rosenbaum.
The knife was found in his pocket. There were Yankel's blood stains on his clothing.
And we started putting this little puzzle together.
As the police moved in that night, the mob who attacked Yankel dispersed. They ran all 4 ways. 2 of the police found Len McNelson had jumped a fence and was crouching behind a bush. As Len McNelson was brought up by the police to Yankel, the person who was actually cradling Yankel on the hood of the car told me that Yankel actually sat up. He didn't know how Yankel found the strength And he said to Nelson, "You motherfucking son of a bitch, why did you stab me, you coward?"
Under the third count, manslaughter in the first degree, what is your verdict? Not guilty. Under the fourth count, manslaughter in the second degree, what is your verdict? Not guilty.
Jury comes in, he instructs the jury, verdict comes in, not guilty. They all around me almost fainted, even Norman. He couldn't believe it. They couldn't figure it out. I was in that courtroom. There was no way in the world that you could convince an African-American jury in Brooklyn the way these guys were presenting their case.
Isaac was sitting with me and goes, "Well, we had to plan what we were going to do because a murderer was going to walk free from that courtroom."
Just your response to the verdict. I'm disgusted and outraged that the ladies and gentlemen who were chosen to uphold the responsibility of justice have disregarded the blatant and obvious evidence which was placed before them.
Ben said to me, "What are we going to do after the press conference?" I looked at him and said, "Let's close down the Brooklyn Bridge."
And that's exactly what happened.
When Lemrick Nelson was acquitted of murder, the focus of the legal strategy, so far as he was concerned, moved to the federal arena.
In 1994, the US Attorney General, Janet Reno, announced that there was going to be an investigation into whether a case could proceed on civil rights grounds. Had Yankel Rosenbaum's civil rights been violated?
The task that faced Norman was a daunting task, and any lesser person wouldn't have begun even, because the idea of someone from Melbourne doing what was necessary to bring justice in these sorts of circumstances was just unheard of.
Don't walk out of here saying it can't happen to me. Don't start saying that it can't happen to anybody in my family. Don't start saying that I'm the last person in the world it could happen to, because it's already happened to him. My brother Yankel was the last person in the world it could happen to.
Nothing stopped them. People are not used to that. People are not used to that.
Norman was exhausting. You know, if Norman came on the phone, "Alan, Norman Rosenbaum here," you were fairly sure it was not going to be a brief conversation.
Norman's conquest was phrased by some type of an elected official or an attorney. An Australian that gets killed in the United States doesn't get the attention.
Maybe the best form of defense is offense.
You got nothing to lose, you're here.
You know, I thought of it as obsession. But that's what he had to do. To keep pushing this thing, he had to annoy people. Norman wasn't interested in being liked by everyone. What Norman was interested in was getting people to listen to him. He did not want to be ignored.
Did God have a plan for all of this? I dare say he did. Do I understand the plan? No. All of those things just didn't happen. They didn't happen because of Norman Rosenbaum or the Rosenbaum family. It happened because God made sure it happened.
Rosenbaum is on a mission to get the US Attorney General to reopen the case against his brother's alleged murderers.
People thought he lived in America and was visiting Australia. Well, sometimes he came back sort of for a day and went back again. I mean, I did keep a tally at one stage, but it just went by the board after a while.
You know, when I would ask Norman, you know, why do you keep doing this? Why will you not let it go? I think I was largely thinking about what this would do to him.
To me, it made an old man of him. He would have succeeded in whatever he wanted to do. He has determination. And this ate into a lot of things. He dropped things to do this because he was that conviction of justice.
I hope my kids, they say they do, I hope my kids appreciated why. I know certainly they've said it to me, we wouldn't have wanted any other way. But in the same way, there are sacrifices and we all make it. I would have much rather have been home with my kids, enjoying my kids growing up all the time, not just some of the time.
What I would like to do is if they could trade back and we could have Yankel back, they could have their lives back.
Since then, the Rosenbaums have had to endure 2 court trials. In the first, Yankel Rosenbaum's alleged killers were acquitted of murder. Then, after fighting for a new trial, the family watched as 2 men were convicted of violating Yankel Rosenbaum's civil rights.
In terms of what this means to my family, one small step for justice, but one hell of a giant leap for the justice system in this country.
Now the US Appeals Court has overturned those convictions and ordered a new trial.
Was it a Norman conquest? Well, temporarily it was, but that 98 verdict was overturned, I think another 4 years down the track. So you get a sense with this story that it's never really over.
There's a picture of Yankel Rosenbaum on the car. This is from August 21st, 1991. They have pictures of me and my brother over here, except they mixed up our names. They called him me and me him, but that's okay. Nobody's going to ever know the difference, except for me and my brother, of course, and my parents, and my brothers, and my sisters, and so on. Inside, there's some more articles. Then towards the middle of the page, there's some more articles about the actual riots and what was going on at that time. It's a picture of Carmel Cato. I see a person in deep grief, really hurt. I see a person who was used by hate mongers to carry out what they would have carried out, what he probably on his own would have never done. That was part of the tragedy of that time.
There was a reporter for the New York Post by the name of Leonard Green who did a story about the 10th anniversary of the Crown Heights riots, and that was in 2001. And in his story, he wrote that Carmel Cato, the father of Gavin Cato, was killed, would love to meet the Rosenbaum family.
And, you know, that's one of the things between I and Norman. Norman's parents know how I felt at the time of losing a child. And they can relate to me, and I can relate to them. They will understand more.
And I looked at that report, and I immediately called Leonard, and I said, Leonard, don't just type it. It's easy to type it. Why don't you proceed?
I was very sceptical. Carmel Cato had been portrayed in the media by radical black elements, Al Sharpton and other disreputable individuals, as being a person who I really wasn't very interested in meeting.
Norman, when you come into town, guess what? Oh, you gotta be kidding. So, yep, we're gonna meet Mr. Cato.
Without question, these two families were the victims of things that they had nothing to do with. And it's heartwarming and it's wonderful to see that they're able to come together and help each other even 10 years later to ease some of the pain. Thank you very much, Mr.
We approach today with a positiveness which we hope others will draw upon to move forward for the betterment not only of the Crown Heights community but also for all of New York.
The Rosenbaum family, they also lost their son, and I lost mine. And I never had the opportunity to meet with them. And this, I think this is one time I feel, it was always with me, that I should reach with this family.
I met with Carmel, and to this day I can say two things. One, my reservations were misplaced, and two, I'm eternally grateful that I not only took up that opportunity to meet with Carmel, but I can now call Carmel Cato my friend.
Norman played cricket, and I was a cricketer. I love it.
Before we knew it, we were talking in depth about great cricket games involving both Australia and the West Indies. And that's when he told me that he actually played cricket with some of the players who went on to tour Australia and play for the West Indies, including their famous captain, Clive Lloyd.
It was great. On to this day, the connection is still there.
I know if you knew this address.
No.
You don't?
No.
You gotta be kidding. It's good to see you.
All right.
Good to see you. Come on in.
All right.
And what happened in Crown Heights, it had been building up for so long. It had been building up for years and years and years. It has been building up and building up and building up. And that day, oh.
All right.
See it?
Yeah.
When him and Norman started talking, the whole city of New York was like baffled. That day, that press, when they made that press, they thought that him and Norman should be on two different poles. And they got together and they talked about their common pain. They talked about their sports. They talked about their countries. They talked about all the things that human beings talk about. So many, I think so many good lessons come out of that whole thing, you know, because before that happened, I mean, you think about the black and the Jewish community were like,
yeah, we.
You know what I'm saying?
That's right, yeah.
I live here. I walk the streets in Crown Heights, and I strongly believe that if I was to fall on the streets of Crown Heights, that I know that someone will come to my aid. It could be someone Jewish, it could be someone black, it could be a white person, but I know that someone will come to my aid.
The people who built the Titanic said it'll never sink. The people who built the World Trade Center said it'll never come down. When things happened in Crown Heights, they said it could never happen again. It should have never happened. Sure it could.
And you better think about that, because that's the key to success oftentimes from those kinds. When you mention Crown Heights, oh, we'd rather not discuss that. Why are you bringing that up, Curtis? Come on, that was in the past. That's not the present. That simply couldn't happen nowadays. Oh, really? Oh, yes, it could. Could happen within seconds, because the ingredients that led to the insurrection in the streets, the attacks against the Jews, the indiscriminate attacks, still are percolating under the surface.
91? That's 20 years ago. But to a mother who's lost her child 20 years ago, it's just yesterday. Are we going in the right direction? I think we are going in the right direction. But that pain, to the folks that were involved in that, doesn't subside.
Oh, here's a picture here.
Yeah.
This is you meeting
Norman's father and his
mother and father.
Yeah.
Wow, this is beautiful. Wow.
We did what we felt was right for us. Yankel's death should not be wiped under the carpet, should not happen again. I don't think I'll ever accept it. I don't know whether anybody ever really does, but deep down, I don't. So be it. I'm saying that's me. I can't, just because somebody says I should accept it and have so-called closure, that's for them, not for me.
12 years to the day after Yankel Rosenbaum's death by stabbing in the Crown Heights riots, Lemrick Nelson has been sentenced to a maximum of 10 years in prison. Charles Price has been sentenced to 12 years for inciting the riots.
What we have witnessed with today's verdict is the final chapter in a series of tragedies.
But it isn't the final chapter for Norman Rosenbaum, who says he'll pursue other suspects, the hospital that treated his brother, and city officials.
We've had 2 people convicted in regard to Yankel's murder. Of the mob of 30 who were involved in the attack on him, there's still 28 who are yet to be arrested and charged. On this table here you see part of the files which grew over the last 20 years concerning the pursuit of my family and I for justice for Yankel. We keep pushing the authorities, both at federal level and state level, to the best we can. It's a slow process, but we take a great deal of solace from cases in the South in the 60s, Mississippi burning, where it took 30, 40 years.
There was no connection with the driver. There was nothing between us. That's one of the parts I would say, you know, I get a strong feeling before he leaves this world, he's going to come and look for me. I felt strongly. He's going to come to tell me he's so sorry.
Although he does not live in the country currently, or shortly after that he left the country, but still, it's something that until his last day, he's going to have with him. He's going to carry it with him.
I believe at the end of the day, the driver will apologize. If the process runs right, at the end of the day, we'll get to Mr. Cato and apologize.
They can be a stone in the cemetery, they can be all this business that is very much alive still within me.
These things happened. You got to get a storm before you get a calm. And I really strongly believe that there is a God. I always think about it. Why did it happen? And if I can't come up with anything, I just leave it to him. I'm not in control.
We don't take flowers. We instead leave a stone. And the significance of doing that, of a stone being not just a marker of respect, but the hardness, the permanency, the everlasting aspect that a person brings to this world. Remember Yankel.